You are now watching Zach Lesage, the best place to learn about competitive Pokemon TCG. Let's get it! Yo, what's poppin' YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, Zach Lesage here. I'm back, I'm well. Last week I was dealing with a little bit of sickness. The week before that, I took a break for my mental health. It feels good to be back. I'm refreshed. You can see I just showered. It's all amazing. Today is going to be a great day. It's going to be a great week. And we have our top 10 best decks. We have a lot of movement coming on this week. It's also a lot of surprising decks made this list, so I'm excited to share it all with you. That being said, the lists are going to be available in the pinned comment in the comments, so you can check out those lists. You can copy and paste them right into PTCGO or PTCG Live, and you could watch reference videos for most of these decks. If you are trying to pick up any of the cards for these decks, consider going to one of my sponsors like PTCGO Store, Atlas TCG. In the description, there's discount codes for all of them. And if you're trying to get a session to prepare for upcoming EUIC, Indy, any of the global regionals or online events or whatever you have going on locally, you can hit me up at metafy.gg/@ZachLesage. I also have a discount code in the description as well. So hit me up for some coaching. I'd totally love to help you on your Pokemon journey. That being said, Brilliant Stars has been an amazing format so far. Let's see exactly what we have going on. Jumping into number 10. Milling its way to number 10 and taking care of your opponent's deck is going to be Durant. Now, Durant's one of the few decks that has some kind of alternate win condition. Most players understand that you could win the game by drawing prize cards. Durant literally tries to deck your opponent out, and they lose when they have no cards to draw. Yep, that's an actual rule. So use Devour with Twin Energy and Double Turbo Energy and rip through your opponent's deck. For more Durants you haven't played, the more cards that you're ripping through their deck, pair that with Curse Shovel and some other disruption cards. This deck can absolutely be a pain to deal with. Now, it's one of those things where Durant is able to be effectively countered if you understand how to play. Basically, under benching works really well, and going with minimal attackers so you can't get trapped with Galar Mine in play. But it is one of those things where it's been a while. I think some players are experimenting bringing it back. Some players who haven't necessarily played when Durant saw success probably are not playing the best against Durant. So it's one trick poniness every few months. I think we've hit that peak again. This deck's probably going to fall off out of nowhere, probably into the top 20, then out of sight going forward. Sneaking up into number 9 and jumping up from number 15 last week is Gengar VMAX. Now, Gengar VMAX is an absolutely terrifying deck. It can do a lot of damage based off your opponent's amount of Pokemon V, VMAX, VSTAR, V-Union Pokemon in play, and its G-Max follow-up packs a huge punch, especially when you factor in the damage modifiers of Single Strike Energy. Now, after Salt Lake City Regionals, and Gengar first held 4 spots in the top 8 of that event. One player got DQ'd. It still had 3 spots in the top 8 of the player. No one really played Gengar since then, or at least it looked like they were playing it seriously at other regionals and a lot of these bigger events. And it makes me wonder why. I think a lot of it has to do with like Mew kind of teeter-tottering back and forth between that 1 and 2 spot between top players, and really like this deck is a strong Mew counter, not as strong at countering Arceus, but it can be built to counter Arceus. So I think Gengar is the type of deck that we can see it's on its way up. Maybe it's going to make a splash at EUIC. I think it's still a very powerful deck, and a lot of the cards like Morpeko added into the deck are going to be very strong against Malamar that's seeing success. I would give Gengar a try because to me I feel like it's placed a little bit low, but we got to go with what the rankings are, and even though it's my personal favorite, it's one of those things where we got to go with how the rankings are. Skyscrapering above the competition is Arceus V-Star Duraludon VMAX. The goal of this deck is to use either Trinity Charge or Trinity Nova to accelerate energies onto Duraludon V or Duraludon VMAX, eventually getting a Duraludon VMAX up to kind of tower with 2 Duraludon VMAX and stop your opponent's special energies from doing damage to this Pokemon. And while they're also doing damage, you're kind of like a slow attacking control deck where you're just doing damage, they do damage back, you heal or you overpower them with your large 330 HP plus Big Charm, Crystal Cave, then Hyper Potion. You could also use Double Turbo to discard off Hyper Potion, just so you have access to all of your energies. I think this deck is well constructed, and it's one of the decks that saw the earliest success in our Brilliant Stars format, Where this deck starts to fail a little bit is the fact that it has to be playing against special energy decks to see the most effectiveness. So if players are just switching their Mews to basic Psychics, which some are, especially with Whimsicott being in our format right now, it's one of those things where Duraludon can be a hit or miss matchup-wise a little bit, and it's also one of those things where people understand where Duraludon VMAX is coming from. It's kind of slow rolling, but it is quite effective. I think this is the type of deck that's going to go up, go down, go up, go down a little bit more frequently than Durant, and going to stay up or down. So you can see that this one's on its downward peak. Maybe in a couple weeks it's going to be shooting back up to those top 5 standards. Fluffing its way to number 7 and dropping from number 5 is Whimsicott VSTAR. And as I just brought up in the Duraludon, this one's going to be all about stopping your opponent's special energies. This one's actually stopping them from attaching them, and you use Crushing Hammer and Fan of Waves to take any previously attached energies and toss them out the window. And basically you want to whittle away your opponent's options with Path to the Peak and stopping them from doing stuff until they're just going to draw paths and you're able to kind of overcome your opponent. This deck's one of the more newcomers to the list, kind of making it over the past couple weeks, and I do think Whimsicott VSTAR is incredibly powerful. However, I find this deck is very coin flip based when it comes down to it. Not necessarily for Crushing Hammer, but for the start of the game. So if this deck's going first, I feel in complete control most of the time. If this deck's going second, I find I am significantly losing more of those games than not. So it's one of those things where I would watch out for. I was actually seriously considering this deck for Indie Regionals, and then I put it away because it was just not meant for me, especially when I was going second in those games. Now, don't get me wrong, this deck is incredibly powerful. I do need to put that out there because it is in the top 10. But I would just put that at, like, I just want to, like, say that, like, if you are necessarily, like, trying to win the game a little bit more frequently, Whimsicott is a deck that I would stay away from, unless, of course, you're into that playstyle. I think it's a little too high risk for me, but it is an incredibly effective deck. Rapid striking its way to number 6 and moving on up from number 11 is Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. Now, this is something that I've been predicting for a while, that this deck would break free from that making its top almost top 10, and then it would just like push through. And I think now we're seeing Rapid Strike variants seeing success, and we've seen some Arc Rapid Strikes and some Rapid Strike Moltres seeing success. Really, I think that this is one of those real deals that will see success now that we have enough of those decks in the top 10. This deck is great at beating decks that are weak to fighting. This deck is great at beating decks like Malamar. Even though there's the weakness, you can snipe them with the GMAX Rapid Flow. That's what this deck's going to be doing. Gale Thrust knocks out fighting weak Pokemon, or chips down Pokemon to go GMAX Rapid Flow, and you have a bunch of things like Basimian and Metacham and Quick Shooting Inteleon and all those things that really do add up for GMAX Rapid Flow. I think Rapid Strike Urshifu has always been a championship winning deck, and it's a little bit like Dodge the Mew kinda. It's not impossible to beat Mew. It's not a great matchup against Mew, but it is one of those things. If you dodge Mew, you're having a great day, and with Mew going down a little bit in playability with Arc Inteleon Rising, it is one of those things where Rapid Strike Urshifu is going to be here, and let it be known. Rapid striking its way all the way to number 5 and dropping from number 4 last week is Malamar with the Rapid Strike Tentacles. The goal of this deck is to show your opponent as many Rapid Strike Pokemon, trainers, and energy that you need to get the knockout, and that's pretty much where it's going to be. You get the knockout by doing 40 times, so if you're trying to knock out a Mew VMAX, for example, they have 310 HP, you got to hit them for 8, 16, 24, 32, 320 damage. So it's one of those things where how do you get 8 in your hand? Well, you draw things with Cynthia's Ambition. You don't really want to be playing your Rapid Strike cards when possible, so try to not play the Karina's Focus, try to play the Cynthia's Ambitions and the Rescue Carriers and the non-Rapid Strike cards, so you are able to hit a little bit more. And yeah, it's really one of those cool, effective single prize card decks, probably the cheapest deck on this entire list, and it's one of the best decks on this entire list. It's gone down a little bit, I think, as players are starting to learn to play against it a little bit more with Arc Inteleon and with Mew. Overall, I think Malamar is still an amazing choice when you're in the top 5 decks, and I think this is a solidified top 5 deck at this point. You just can't really go wrong with any of these decks up here. It's more personal preference. And this is a great deck, especially when it comes to like sequencing and understanding how to manage your resources. Starbirthing its way to number 4 and taking a huge leap up from number 8 last week is Arceus VSTAR with Galar birds. Now, we originally saw this deck with Ian Robb and Nick Moffat doing well at Salt Lake City, and it's coming back a little bit more with the resurgence. I think players are gearing up for EUIC and Indianapolis and all other kind of regionals. So it's really one of those things where I'm looking at and they're just like, okay, you want to know what we can kind of roll with this deck. It's a little bit more difficult to play, and it's delicate is probably the best way that I put for it. So a lot of players are just like, we're playing this deck recklessly. I think you got to play this deck a little bit more chess-like, methodically. So going forward with this, the whole goal is to be using Arceus VSTAR with Inteleon as a backup. If you could also sacrifice things like a Dark Box deck, so you can use the Galarian Moltres, or you could power up a Galarian Moltres V against a Mew deck, or Zapdos can kind of swing out of nowhere and knock out an Arceus V-Star. I do foresee this deck going down a little bit because a lot of these other Arceus builds are teching Dunsparce, and other fighting weak decks are not necessarily going to be as ineffective against Zapdos as previously. So it's one of those things where I think right now it's spiking up. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this deck drop down a couple spots down, probably still top 10, but still dropping down a little bit. Zapping its way into number 3 and up from number 6, another huge leap is Jolteon VMAX. Jolteon VMAX, all about that Max Thunder Rumble, 100 damage to the active, 100 damage to the bench. You get that bench damage with that Inteleon or Zigzagoon, because they do have to be damaged first. Between having Elemental Badge, which is its own proprietary extra energy, and ways to Cheryl and heal damage off, I think this deck is incredibly effective. As I've played this deck more, I do find it's more effective against players who do not necessarily know how to play against Jolteon VMAX as effectively as others. And sometimes Jolteon VMAX can just go path and lock a player out of the game. Other games, I feel players are overbenching or just like not reacting properly to a Jolteon VMAX deck. So to me, I think it's one of those things where Jolteon VMAX is definitely a great way to see some solid points. Like, it's kind of a middle of the road deck. But I do find that, like, if you find yourself playing against better players as a Jolteon player, you might not necessarily have as high as a win rate as you would otherwise. And that's not to say if you lose against Jolteon you're bad, or if you play Jolteon that you're bad. I just find that it's one of those things where I'm trying to consider this deck, but it's so hard for me to consider this deck. So in my personal opinion, I'm staying away from this one, but I might change my mind on it in the future if I find something else going on with the metagame. Starbirthing its way all the way to number 2, and number 2 for basically the last forever is how I see, is Arceus VSTAR with Inteleon. Now, this is Bruno's deck from Sao Paulo Regionals, and I do think that this is the best Arc Inteleon list that I've seen, so that's why we're rolling with it today. Gotta take our inspiration and give our praise where it's due. This deck's all about using Trinity Nova, Trinity Charge, Accelerate Energies onto your own Arceus, attack with basically 3 of them, offering up a single prize card Pokemon once during the game to give your opponent a 7 prize card game. So maybe attacking with a Shady Dealings Inteleon maybe, and just kind of rolling through your opponent's Pokemon and being able to use Starbirth, search your deck for all these little things. You might see cards like Zigzagoon being weird, but Zigzagoon on Trinity Nova doing 210, minus 20 from double turbo energy, 190, plus a choice belt doing 220 is going to be getting a knockout on another Arceus V and on a lot of other popular V Pokemon. And I just think between quick shooting and damage modifications and all these different tech cards, that this deck really has a lot to offer. So if you are looking for a very technical, strategic deck going forward, I think this is a great one on top of a layered basic deck. So I think it's really cool, and I think it's really consistent with both the Starbirth and Shady Dealings. Popping into number 1, and number 1 for the past like 5 months is Mew VMAX. Now, Mew VMAX at the beginning of the week was pretty much tied with Arc Inteleon. Arc Inteleon might have surpassed it a little bit, but then towards the end of the week, and basically with the results of the GG Tour, and I think it was the Tournament of Doom, that Mew VMAX just like skyrocketed again and found ways to just win. I think Mew VMAX having access to Cross Fusion Strike, copying any of your attacks in play, having access to that turn 1 huge Meloetta with all those fusion strikes to get knockouts on, I mean, anything pretty much in its own proprietary fusion strike, draw engine with Genesect, and all these tricks that you have with energy acceleration, damage modifiers, searching for anything. This to me is the list. This is a list inspired, if not the exact same list, from Andre Chiasen, one of the local players. They played this at a local $1,000 tournament, won it. I love the list, and I thought that it's very on point. It's only a couple cards off from mine, changed those, and I've been loving this list ever since. overall, I think that Mew VMAX is just the best deck in formats. I know a lot of people are saying Inteleon is. I think Arceus decks are more bountiful or more plentiful in the metagame than Mew decks. But if you really know what you're doing with Mew, I think Mew's on a different level. And if you don't know what you're doing with Mew, Mew can sometimes kind of smooth over those edges. So if you are new to the game, or if you're looking for a deck to up your win percentage automatically, I do think Mew VMAX is the best deck in the format to do that. It's not necessarily the most exciting deck to play, but it's one of those things where I do think Mew VMAX is the best deck, and it's always going to be one of my, if not the top consideration for upcoming events. It's not necessarily the most exciting because we've seen Mew forever, but understanding how to play this deck is going to be pivotal to understanding the format. I do recommend that even if you don't like to play Mew at tournaments, at least try playing Mew so you can understand it a little bit more. And that's what we got going on in our Brilliant Stars Best 10 decks this week. Tomorrow we will have the other half of this video, the top 20 best decks, to really show you how the format really develops outside of the top 10. A lot of those decks are sometimes a little bit more fringe than these ones, but it's really cool to see how decks can see success on some weeks and really introduce some new decks to some new players. It's a cool way to pick up some lists as well, so check that out for tomorrow. And by all means, hit this like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what's up. I love just getting back to people. I know I've been pretty bad over the past week. Like I said, I got over a little bit of a stomach flu / food poisoning, so it was more of a... I wasn't staring at a work screen. I was staring at a, for fun TikTok screen, just like everyone else when they're sick. At least I assume that's what everyone does when they're sick. But that's cool. It's one of those things. So yeah, check out the lists in the pinned comments. You can copy and paste them right into PTCGO, PTCG Live. If you do want to become a YouTube member or Patreon member with deck list hookup or higher, you do get access to my deck list at all times. I do regularly update these throughout the week. So sometimes I'm grinding out a deck. I mean, I'm coaching 40-ish hours a week, and I'm play testing a lot for indie and upcoming events. So I'm putting a lot of effort into these lists. If you're trying to get them early access before these videos, or even in between where we see how they're made, you could always do that, and it also helps contribute to the stream and continuously making sure that this channel can do well and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, I'm trying to get some bread, you know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where I'm not trying to ask, but it's also one of those things where if you are trying to get access to deck lists, I think it's a great deal. It's about $5 a month, and it really does help support me as a content creator. That being said, I gotta go edit this one quickly. I'm cutting this one incredibly close, but I did get a good sleep last night, and I'm feeling super refreshed for today, so we're gonna tackle this week, everyone, together. Hopefully everyone has an amazing week. And if there's anything you need, by all means, hit me up in the DMs on Discord or Twitter. I'll catch up with everyone later. Peace out and have a great one. I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. It means the world to me. And my goal with this channel is to spread my love of the game and knowledge with our entire Pokemon TCG community. If you haven't already, help signal boost this video to other Pokemon TCG fans by liking it, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to the channel. Hopefully we reach our goals really soon. Check out this recommended video, and have yourself a great day. Thanks.